the stream's just going to quickly make sure that everyone knows that we're streaming, because that's how they end up coming along. So Rust and Specs Game Dev on the Recall Singularity Implementing Construction. That's what we're doing today. The URL has to be my Recall Singularity one. So, oh, I can hear myself echoing. It's interesting. I better mute myself. Okay, so that's all working. Wow, that number there is getting quite big. 4,414. Hope some people have enjoyed the stream and got some benefit from it. It's live. Come jump and I wonder if there's like a option. I wonder if there's an option in Discord to do something to like make the stream streamy. You would have thought that there would be something I can do to share the stream. There's a watch button here. I don't know how you stream into a channel. Apparently you can stream into a channel somehow. I don't know. Whatever. And someday I'll figure all this stuff out, being a highfalutin streamer and all. Okay, so well, I've got two people. Hi. Probably counting myself, so hi weird, I imagine that's you watching, or someone else. I'll make sure I actually feel free to say hello. Make sure did I actually post that other post that I was going to post? Yes I did. And what does that mean? The last thing to do is to mention it on Twitter in case one of my followers wants to come along from here. This went live on a stream, probably 2 hours long, about game logic to do construction and specs. Yeah. For the recall. I don't know how to. Do I say streaming? Streaming. Watch people code. Is there a watch people code word? No. I don't know. Space. Rustling. Well, we'll go with that, and we'll see. I need to put the link in. Okay. Tweet. And hopefully somebody enjoys coming along to watch. I better switch to my creator dashboard. Okay, so let's get started. Font size and window size. It's been a little while since I streamed, as you can tell. Coming back out of the holidays has been a bit tricky. It's just trying to get back in the pattern of things. Get back into the swing of developing games after a holiday and stuff. All the stuff. That looks like I got that layout correct, and my font size seems to be okay. Great! So we're creating a bunch of tests. I want to prove to myself I can do some of the gameplay stuff at a high level. I want these particular features in place. Gold refining is what we've done in the past. So if you set up a ship world with this particular floor layout, you'll need to imagine it yourself. If you this particular floor layout where it has that's a container, this is a refinery, and then underneath that is a conveyor pointing up at the refinery and going across, and then underneath that there's a scoop pointing up at this conveyor. So this little map moves stuff from the scoop to the refinery where it gets turned into pure gold, and this test passes. The next test, we're not going to do hand mining just yet. The next test is that you can build a survival core, which is going to be the middle of a spaceship. So until now you've never been able to build a spaceship. You just start with one. There's not much gameplay code in place, so that's what we're fixing. So in this case, I want to have what am I doing here? Don't know why I'm adding a spaceship in this location. That doesn't make sense. I think I put that code there to as the template for the next thing I was going to do, which is adding a player. So we don't need this anymore. So with a player, you should be able to build something called a core, which is what goes in the middle of a spaceship. So I was thinking that each player can have something called a construction zone, which is how big an area around the player they're able to build. And yeah, that should be cool. I just realized I haven't got my stream dashboard visible to me. I'm just going to find that and have a look. Where is my dashboard? Back to Twitch. How do I get to myself? Create a dashboard. I thought that's what it was, or is it stream dashboard? Sorry to keep you guys waiting while I figure myself out. I'm just over here on my other screen trying to figure out how to use Twitch myself. I'm not a real pro at this. Is it video producer? Okay, there's recall singularity on Twitch. Here I am streaming. That's you watching. Thank you for watching. And I thought there was an option here, if they got rid of it, where I could like watch it as it's being made and see things in stats and so on and other nice things, which I thought was a create a dashboard, your live managed stream. This is what I was looking for. Here we go. Fantastic. So I just like to watch this little view account here as you guys watch me. That's nice. I wonder if I set my bitrate too high for people to watch. Anyway, so I was all excited before I had a quick break to put the kids to bed tonight that I was going to make a construction zone. I'm going to open a window. It's too hot with all the windows shut. I was going to make a construction zone here, which is an area around the player. So the player has a biped component. In fact, I'll just show you in space. We've got something called a wrapper for space, and we've got this process of adding a player. So you create a player which is a biped who also has an input so you can move them, and a buffer grid. So we can see what they can hold. Wow, I need to be a bit more organized over here. Feeling very disorganized all of a sudden. Ugh, close all. Close that. Check Discord. Okay. Very disorganized. It's been too long. I used to stream every day. It was like only a few weeks ago. And it feels like a long time ago now. Okay. So this entity is going to have a construction zone. So the player is going to be a biped, but they also have an area around them where they can build stuff. I'm going to represent that causing with a construction zone. But it's not just a player who can build stuff around them, it's going to be ships and so on as well. So construction zone. In order to specify its details, I need to make a constructor for it. So let's quickly deal to that. So I'm just going to close other things other than construction zone. I need this back, and I'm going to need the wrapper for space and close. And the other one I wanted was something called test sector. I showed you that earlier. So close all to the right. Yeah. So construction zone. So construction zone needs a constructor, and it's just, well, it doesn't need one. Let's just not bother with this right this second. So let's do it. Okay. So let's just say that all it needs is a distance, and the distance is U16. And from the start, I'm just going to say that the so we're going to return a new construction zone, one of these. So this function returns one of those, and to create it, its construction dist is going to be dist. So that's how far you can build away. And the supply dist is going to be dist times 2. And we're using U16, so let's use U16 saturated multiply. Let's see this. Saturating mole, multiply saturated mole. I thought it was a saturating mole. Okay. Let's quick look at the Rust docs. Standard. You're looking in U16. Here it is. Well, actually I want the primitive, and I wanted checked mole. What does that do? It's probably option. Yeah, I really want a saturating mole. The overflowing one's the one I don't want. Can I be bothered? I don't think I can. Let's just not worry about that. Let's just assume that dist is always going to be small enough that we can store 2 times of that in the U16. So, supply distance is always 2 times that, and flags for now is going to be 0. I was thinking down the track we're going to have to figure out a whole bunch of stuff like force stuff. I've set it up so that this editor is reformatting my code every time I save based on my preset requirements, so sometimes when I save things will snap into this kind of different format. Like here, if I break a line, when I save and go away, it's going to just not do what I thought it was going to do. Come on, I was trying to do a demonstration. Why are you listening to me, editor? Anyway, there shouldn't be a comma there. Ah, there we go, snap. I think the saturation zone done, construction zone done. So, for a person, how far away can they build? In the wrapper for space, for when we're adding a player, we say to the player, how far away can they build? Construction zone new. Let's just say they can build 100 units away. Yeah. And then also we'll make it so spaceships have a limited area that they can build in. So we'll just give them a construction zone as well, and we'll say they can build 200 away. Later on, you'll be able to get upgrades to increase these areas, how far they can build far away from themselves. So the idea is that you can build in a circle around a spaceship, you can build in a small circle around a person. The spaceship supplies the person with goods. It might be that the spaceship can't actually build unless you get an upgrade. It can just send things to help other units that actually do the real construction. So construction zones flags might say that it can't build, it can only help build by sending items to something that can do the actual, building now stuff. To be determined. Add player, construction zone, add spaceship, construction zone. What else did I want to do? We're probably going to want to synchronize those between client and server. You won't worry about that right this second, but that's on my to-do list in my head. I have to add them to another class that knows how to send them from one to the other. What's next? We've got things which are buildable. So, for this test, we have an action that says when a player appears. And part of that is that this new construction zone thing that I've added here, I'm going to add that to the action. So player appears at iris in here is where it also creates a player. This is for a client to server type communication thing. So there's 2 ways to make a player now, which is kind of annoying. This one is the multiplayer way. We run this on both the client and server and sync, and everyone agrees on what's going on. Hopefully, that's the plan. So a player can appear. So in test sector, I need to push an instruction to the space world saying that a player appears with what data. There's no data, so it needs a biped inside of it for the starter to be complete. Biped, what does a biped have in it? Has an X and Z look. Let's make a very simple version of new that just does the bare minimum, which I think this does already. Great, okay. So biped is equal to biped new X and Y location. Let's just say 0 and 0 for now. The reformatting is kind of annoying at times. So it's X and Y. which player is this? We're going to need to have a player ID, so let's just make a temp constant in the tests. And I believe I've defined player ID. What if there's a streaming help? I wonder if there's a way of showing you guys what keys I'm pressing while I'm streaming. So you can see all my different shortcut keys. Show short keys. Streaming. Okay, you know what, I'll solve that problem some other time. So I was just thinking it might be nice if I had a little box down here that said what I was typing, so you could see that I was pressing a particular combination, in this case, you know, Shift Control Alt N, which is my favorite one. But then again, you might just figure that out yourself, because it's just so freaking awesome that you do it all the time yourself. Okay, player ID. I had some way of specifying a player ID number. I think I got a client ID. Oh well, this is called player ID. Do I mention player ID anywhere else? I just use client ID for this, which is like a number from the multiplayer data. Okay, that's fine. It's U16. So survival core. Push an instruction to the space world, which is like where all the spaceships live, that there's a new biped and it belongs to a given player ID, biped, new child world. In this case it doesn't want to know who it belongs to, it wants to know, we're going to specify who it belongs to at some point. I thought I was going to create another component for that, and I don't think I have yet. Because there's one of them was called active input, which is something similar. It specifies not the player number. Okay. Looks like it's time for another component. So, in space, which is where we are, we're going to need, again, this is another component we're going to need everywhere, but again, just like the construction zone, I'm going to just ignore that problem and put it in here for now, because if I think too much, my brain starts to melt. In here we're going to put something like force info. Force is like who owns it. That's a name in Factorio of the different sides. So we'll create a struct for that. It's nothing to do with midichlorians. Prelude. Struct force info. Okay, so with the structure we need to know which player it belongs to, so we'll just say, and we'll put a client ID, which is not strictly okay because, you know, different. Maybe I should go into here and fix that now. So there's a client ID, world ID. You know what, maybe I should just make a force ID. Let's do that. That's some crazy stuff. Because you might have two players that are sharing, you know, somehow different, and U16 will be enough just for right the second, but we're going to have to change that later. Just call it ID at this point, I think. Well, no, better call it force ID. Okay, and the same thing's true in here somewhere. There was somewhere else I wrote, yes, test force ID. And that is of type Force ID. You guys are staying incredibly silent. But I do appreciate you watching. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you'll let me know. There's a chat box somewhere. But thanks for watching. Let's see. Force ID, what should we put in here? Let's put 101 for now. 105. So if you belong to a certain force, you belong to a force ID. So player appears, we need to specify in here it's force. So I might as well put a force info in here, whatever the hell that is. And down here we're going to add as a component with the force info we have, so that's self. Well, we'll do it up here. So okay, for that to work I'm going to have to derive all this stuff here. Force info can't currently be imported, I'll fix that soon. All these derives are required. We need to implement a component for this. Player appears. We need to do, no, that's the action. We'll take a look at biped. So we need to do something like this. So force info, need to derive a component for this. Import from, well, we want, yep, this is not working because I don't think force info is actually even set up properly. Force info, I did set it up, okay. So why is this prelude not working? Oh, this is not a use statement. I was thinking of Python. Okay, so that fixes all those problems. Vex storage is like, so there's basically going to be a vector of U16s, and their index into the vector is going to be the entity number. That's how specs works, which is kind of cool. I say U16s because force ID is actually U16, as you can see over on the screen. That's not showing there. So we store those U16s in here in this vector, indexed by a number and something called an entity, which is how specs works. So that's kind of cool. It's not a component for biped, it's a component for force info. Great. This needs to be public pub, so we can go into the pub. Apparently the way I babble a lot is good for streaming. Unless I put some music on. I'm assuming that you guys are playing music, and by not playing music I let you choose whichever music you want to listen to rather than whatever music I want to listen to. I'm trying to be kind. Maybe I should just listen to my favorite music anyway. Anyway, I was listening to Hosier before I put this on. Speak for force info. Okay, so players need those. They need to belong to a force, because that force will always be with them. Grab a space, add a player, child world. So it's going to need a force as well, and that force is going to be a force ID, like so. We need to add it to the things that get built here. Dot with force. This is used for testing this function. Add player. Wonder how often I've used this so far. Okay, not too bad. I kind of haven't used it. Almost wonder if I should just delete it. It's only really used at the moment for this particular setup, my static setup of the world. Oh well, anyway. Force. With force ID. Well, we don't need to make a new one, we just need to set it up. So we'll just give it this name, yeah. Good, it's happy. And it's not a force ID here, it's force info. Great. And strictly speaking, if you add a spaceship, you also need to give it a force as well, so it belongs to somebody. So we'll put a force info in here, and we'll specify that as part of this data here. Great, so now spaceships belong to somebody. Let us continue thinking about my code. create player, add actions to build a new core. So the create player is what this player appears thing is. Actions to build a new core. Okay, so if we want to build a new core, then there needs to be an action for that, and I think I made one. Create core doesn't do anything yet, it's just an empty module. So let's have a look at player appears as a template for create core, and we'll just go in here and replace all the player appears with whoops, create core. Let's try that again. Bam, 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 bam. Done. So create core is done. No. Okay, so create core, what does it need to know? It's going to need to know where it's going to be. To find out where it's going to be, it basically needs a spaceship. We have a spaceship component, explicit facing bounds child world. Yeah. So we need to know where it's going to be. That's basically it. We might always just put it around the same way, because the core is just the middle of the ship, and as far as I understand, it's going to be symmetrical, so it goes in the same place. So create a core. We need to know which force owns the core when it's made. Oh, hello Weird, nice to see you. Welcome. So we just, for those people just joining us, including you, we constructor, we're just making a test here which is building our first survival core. So every ship has a core in the middle. Survival core is going to be the lowest level version of that ship, which you can build out of basically random junk. And once you've built one, so you go to an asteroid, you collect some random junk, you build a survival core, you build a really trashy, cheap ship around it, and then you go head off and get better equipment, and you build more expensive ships out of it, and you upgrade and upgrade. So that's kind of the plan. Hi Ed, this is great. I haven't seen you on the stream before, I don't think. You got a green name. That's cool. I don't know you could have a green name. Neat. I'm sure that means something great. Anyway, I'm just still kind of chuffed that you guys care. Thanks. So, survival core. Create core. Where was I? Construction zone are areas you can make ships around. We're going to create a new core, which is an action. All my actions lock the world. Excellent. I have got you for the first time. Create core. We're going to say where it's going to be. And we have an undo, which is going to be an entity for now. I don't really care. Yeah, undo is like a theoretical idea where you can have actions that can be undone, but I haven't even bothered to. I'm just making placeholders right now for that, so kind of ignore the undo part. Apply is what runs the action against a world. World is the thing from specs that contains entities in it. When you create a core, strictly speaking, I should check that the core is not going to appear inside something else, but hey, that would just be too. We'll just do tests later. It's going to create a new entity, and it's going to put all the spaceship junk in it. So let's have a look how we make a spaceship. This is currently the way that one builds a spaceship, so let's just whack that in here. So for the spaceship, we're going to want to put it where? We're going to put it at self.xlock, we're going to put it at self.zlock. We're going to do the bounds. What do I use for bounds usually? Probably use shipbox new, or shipbox with a shipbox is like a square. There's left, right, top, bottom, and they're relative to the center here. So easiest probably to just use new and then say left, right. So we could say new, for instance, and we could say a new spaceship. What are its bounds? So minus 4, 4, minus 4, 4. Right, so it's like a 8x8 square. The child world has not been created yet, so we're going to create this child world in a second. So let child world ID equals something. So to make a child world, we have to go look in sector, So if this is on the server, yeah, if this is on the server, then it's going to have to figure out what the world ID is going to be. Oh, that's right, we had a next world ID idea, didn't we? How did I use this? I did not use this. Okay. So we need to be able to get the next world ID. Great. Let's add some code to sector that knows how to get a next world ID. Pub function get next world ID. So sector has a list of different worlds. There's one inside each spaceship, and there's one more special one that holds all the other spaceships inside of it, called the space world. Every other world is a production floor. Each ship contains a production floor inside of it. If it's a very large ship, we might put different ones in the same deck. So anyway, we need a way to get a new one that everyone can share. So up till now, I've been using hard-coded ones. So it's going to modify self, and it's going to return a global world ID. Now, strictly speaking, it's going to need to be able to put this global world ID in this action for this to work properly. So we're just going to put that in here now. Global world ID, right? So how does one do this? Okay. So I wonder if I can use global world ID max. Probably can. What does it suggest? Because what I want to do is find the maximum value of a U32. Let's just make an awful assumption that we're not going to run out of IDs and it's not going to be full. So we'll just put an arbitrary cap on the world IDs. It's probably the easiest thing for me to bother to do right now. So for possible ID and it's going to be from in Rust, for possible ID in self.next world ID to say 1 million. Yeah, we're going to if it's not in, so self.worlds contains key possible ID. So if it doesn't contain this key, if not contains key that, self.nextWorldID equals possible ID, return possible ID. Now there's a race condition here, which is if we don't immediately, if we created two cores in the same tick, we might get the same ID twice. So I'm going to have to actually create the world right now, otherwise it's not going to work. So I'm going to have to actually call get or create world to make the world so that it exists. So create next world ID rather than get next world ID. Create the world returns both the ID and the type of that other thing. So get or create world returns a mutable pointer to a world sync. So that's what we'll return, just because I'm sure that'll be handy later on. So we want this to be +1. We're going to return a possible ID and get or create world self.get or create world. So I guess it's possible to return an option from this because it runs out of IDs strictly. Yeah. Nah, let's not worry about that. We'll just panic at the disco. Panic. Ran out of IDs for worlds. Oh no. I come up with something more sensible than that later. Pardon me. Not the best code, but I'm not trying to write the best code, I'm just trying to write code that I can live with until I'm ready to write the best code. So I'll return possible ID. Return that into a global world ID. Return the possible ID, and we're going to return get or create world. So why isn't I put this? Okay. So next world ID needs to be a U32 because that's what the other type is. Okay, and we shouldn't start with 0 here, we should start with some number larger than 0. Let's just start with 200. So we've got kind of a reserved section. I can put fixed numbers in if I want it. This here needs to also be a global world ID. So I'll just do this here as well, and it needs to be a reference to that. Great. So create next world finds out what the next world ID is going to be. So in my test later on, I'm going to need to make this action that creates the core, but for my test I don't need to worry too much about that. So we'll figure it out. Okay, so let new world ID and that equal this. That's what we're using. In fact, in this test we don't even need to worry about it because tests can just use a constant, so we'll use a constant for this. Oh no, I like the idea of testing the function. Create next world ID. So test sector dot server dot space. I think I made a function to get the server space. Test sector has a number of useful functions in it. Here. Space client, space mute, which is the server one, so we'll use that. This is this whole thing implements like a client server simulation. So there's a sector which is on the client, and there's a server, and there's we create a world on the server, and then each tick, where are we? Each tick we actually perform the ticks up to that point on both the server and the client, and then we immediately get a list of messages that each one wants to send to each other, and we copy them across to the other guy. So it's like they sent messages and they got instantly received the next tick. So there's like a ping of 1/20th of a second in this simulation, and then we repeat this process for each tick. And you know, that gold test worked, so it works. And I set up the server and then I check here on the client, so it's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure of the items that I checked on the client. Floor mute. That's checking something on the server. That's not exactly what I wanted. Oh well, I'll worry about that later. I probably need to make another version of this that checks on the other device. To do test is only checking items are okay on the server. Check them also on the client. Otherwise, don't get distracted. Okay. Actions to build new core. So the action to build new core is going to be this create core one. We need a global world ID, which we're getting from this new world ID here. So it's server mute. I think it was space mute. Great. Create next world ID. Great. So the point is that when the client wants to build this thing, it's going to call the server with a message saying, I'm going to build a core, and the server is going to receive that message and it's going to decide what the world is going to be for the new core by calling the function you see here. and then it's going to populate an action for create core and send it back to the client, and it'll run them both in sync, and they'll both, and a spaceship will pop into existence and everyone will be happy. Force info, yeah, executes data for create core. We're going to create a ship here, a new spaceship. Its force info belongs to its new force info is going to be self.forceinfo, self.force. The spaceship is going to have the X and Y location, this ship box. Did I mention anything else I've missed? No. Child world is going to have that ID, so it's self.world ID here, which is from this structure. Actor input is default, so a player can control it. Where is it located? It's located at X and Z. It needs to make a physics body, which isn't moving. These are part of the physics systems. I wonder if I want to make these things part of my prelude. If I keep on using them, I don't know. Anyway, we'll import these. So I want to import this, import that, import this. So these are the physics things that are needed for a spaceship to work. This cuboid has a particular shape. It's going to be half extents. Probably, I guess it's going to be 4 by 4 by 1. Or what was it? It's probably, yeah, like so. The one in the middle is how thick the spaceship is from the top to bottom. It's not moving. Has a construction zone. Great. Now, part of this is that we're going to have to create a new world at both ends. I wonder how one does that. Perhaps I need to somehow spawn an action immediately putting it in that world. So you know, you're a production floor and you suddenly need to have a core placed within you and have your floor set up and other things like this. How do we do that in an action that only has the space world? I don't know right this second. Let me think some more on that one. All this stuff is going to be so obvious given more time. Anyway, so that creates a spaceship. We don't have a way of reversing it, which doesn't matter. Let's have another look at this test. Test sector. So we want to create a new world. We need to push the instruction that you saw before. So the instruction is going to be a create core, which is here, and here. What parameters does it need? Well, these need to be public so I can specify them. So we'll put we'll just do all these things as before. So fix 64 from float 0. And put the ship within a certain range. Let's just say we'll put it within 10. 10, 10, and that's X and Z. X, this one's Z. Okay, so that's where it's going to be. What else do we need? Need a world ID, so there's the new world ID. And the force is the force info. Force info just has this info ID in it. That's the player's ID. We don't need to use new, we just need to use the curly braces. Force info, that is test player ID. So that's the action that should create a core. So let's set up a new core, action synchronized. And it says some other things about the player's inventory that doesn't matter. So now the next thing is the core present. So assert equals. So we need to one thing we're going to be curious about is what spaceships are available. I've got a nice little test for synchronizing spaceships. Where are we? In space serialization. In here, I've got this nice way of getting a list of all the spaceships that are around. So we're just going to do a quick test that the list of spaceships, which is inside of so to get the client world we need. So this gets a specs world. We use read storage to get spaceships. Then we join map and collect them to, and then we use a debug string to get a nice debug output that looks like this, which we can compare in our test to see if it's what we expected. So we can just quickly do that here. So test sector dot space mute, which is, I think I made that a world. I can't remember if that was a world. Yes, it was. So space mute is already a world. Easy peasy. And with everything else here, that's a really useful little function. We might just quickly put this in here. So function. So create a function, click components, which is a template function, and the template's type T. I'm not sure what the type of T is. It's a component, I guess. And we have a world. I want a reference to a world, and what it's going to return is a vec of type T. I think it returns a vec of references to type T. No, a vec of T's. And the way it does it is using this. And instead of spaceship, it uses T, like so. Great. Now there's an extra bracket here. I think we have to put that like this. Oh, you need a reference. You need a reference to this thing. Here. Good. Okay. So, test sector. So I should be able to say test sector, collect components, space mute, and specify that I want a spaceship using a turbofish. Is that actually less verbose? I don't know. Let's just assume the answer to that question was yes. Well, anyway, so we collect all the spaceships together, and we're going to assert that they're equal to a test string. So assert equal. So oh yes, I did a format instruction like this. Assert equal the formatting of ships is equal to, and I'm just going to put, I assume there's nothing, we should get a particular spaceship, and we'll see it in the test. If this actually creates a spaceship from this push instruction here, then that will, in a very lovely way, mean we have an extra ship in here. Now I don't want to use this with spool ship because it creates the ship straight away. I just want a plain new sector which has nothing in it, so we'll just use new. Now everything about this is not going to compile initially. It's going to be the worst. Let's see. So that's the first test. Second test is that the client has the same one. So client, and there should be some stuff to do with worlds as well. So assert, we're going to assert that the world exists. Did I make an optional one that doesn't, or do I need to write my own? Let's just say the client has world. We'll put a world ID. And it returns a boolean. We get something we can test for, we see. And it's going to be our self.sector. I need to put self in here. You point to it. So self.sector dot has all clients. Now we find out if a sector has a client, a world. Sector. Don't have a has. There's a get world which returns an option. So we'll just see if get world returns null. Get world ID is none, or is some. So that's how we find out if a client has a particular world. Oh, that should be global. So there'll be an assert we do down here as we just check that there's a world exists. So assert that the test sector dot client has world, and we specify the new world ID, which is the one that was created up here. New world ID. Great. I think it's happy. There's a whole bunch of other chatter in here about, so this is checking that that's present. There's chatter about the player having a certain inventory and having less of it. About inventory state, we're going to check the server setup. We have action to build new core. Check server set up a new core, action synchronized, and so on. There's stuff to do with building the floor of this new world that hasn't been done. There's all sorts of reasons why this won't compile. Let's see if it does. Run test simulation. So over here we're going to find out the litany of errors, because I kind of just hacked it up real quick, so we're going to be lots of little things missing. 23 errors. Let's go. Oh, we just quickly fix some yellow stuff, because that's going to get really annoying. A bunch of unused imports. Okay, can I make this window a nice size for fixing bugs? Oh, that's right. I know what I'll do. I usually have everything undocked because I'm using all three monitors. But with this work with you guys, it's easier to dock it again, and then I can just close some editors. Close all in group. It was nice to see you, Ed Swordsmith. Thanks for dropping by. See ya. Good night. Okay. Failed to resolve. Okay, so it doesn't know what isometry 3 is, which is from our physics code. It's interesting how that's not showing as red. So it comes from in algebra. So I'll just replace that with this, and it might be that fixes the compile error. Oh, I need a semicolon. Okay. The name shape is defined multiple times. We've got one there and one here. Yep, that's fair enough. Get rid of this. The name shape failed to resolve. Physics bodybuilder. Okay, so let's see where that's defined. It's from Specs Physics as well. So we'll just put that in here. Physics Slider Builder. Construction zone. Oh yes, this is my new component, so I'm just going to make sure the construction zone is nicely exposed. So construction zone is one of the components we just made here. I like to expose them like this. Pub use construction zone. Construction. It's not public. Okay, I forgot to make it a public struct. Here, pub. So here we pub. Construction zone. And the other one was force info. Again, needs to be pub. And I forgot to expose that. And then rock component. That's what makes all music great. Don't have that. So with those things in place. So the reason why that's important is because space mod is used by a module here called prelude. So here we export everything in space to anyone who's using prelude. So that means that in my other file, it's not compiling. This one here is already importing everything from prelude, so it doesn't need to worry about construction zone now, because I should have found it in the prelude. Although it's still read, so I guess it did not. Probably new is not safe. So down to 10 errors. We're not borrowing from a cow. We're not using superstar. Interesting. Don't know why that's going away. We're not using fix64 or global world ID. Game serialize. These are all probably in the prelude. Great, that's enough for now. Player appears. Okay, so player appears is also not exposed to the prelude. I think, where'd I put that? It was one of the actions. Player appears is here. It makes a new player. It doesn't know about construction zones either. Is new not public or something? No, it's not. Okay. But this one is not exposed in this mod. So, okay, so we don't have player appears as public. Pub. And also need to do create core. Again, not public. Great. So this running cargo format every time I save is constantly putting these back into a nice sorted order, which is really cool. I had to customize my format a bit so that I liked it, because I was making very short lines and that was bothering me. So I changed it so it favored longer lines for lots of reasons. You can put a little file down here. So, you know, compress layout likes functions on a single line if it has them, has quite a wide max width, and tries to make things small as much as possible. I like as much code as possible to fit on my screen. So biped. I bet there needs to be a lowercase b. Player appears, it's probably not exposed yet. Player appears as one of those components we're looking at sticking, wasn't it? There's that one there. There's exposed here. Yes. Okay. So we'll just compile one more time and see what we're up to. 6 errors. We'll just fix these imports real quick. Doesn't need component of X storage. Don't need to borrow a cow, man. These 3 are no longer required. Neither are these 2. The prelude is done to those. Okay. I seem to get my compile errors to appear twice. Does this got the prelude? Probably hasn't. Uses super, so it means I haven't got the prelude up here. I have. Okay, that's interesting. Is it because I haven't said pub use? Probably. So use create. Yep, they fixed it. Still 6 errors. Okay, test player ID. Can't find it in the scope. Did I call it force ID in the end? Yeah, I got ship world and force ID. I think in this action we can safely ignore the whole child world ID. It's just this is put inside of the details for the spaceship. Whatever ID is in the action goes in the spaceship. We don't worry about it. At this level we're only worrying about the space world. That's fine. Test player ID. So I'm just debugging the creation of a new spaceship in terms of there's a unit test for it. Creating a new spaceship until now has been kind of something you couldn't do at runtime. That's kind of what we're up to at the moment. First it needs to compile, and it's gonna fail because that's how this works. This needs to be test force ID. So we need to use self.xlog and self.zlog, helpfully pointed out by the compile errors as well. It's just saying put the word self here. Such a great compiler, man. Cannot find component in the scope. It needs to be a capital C. Let's see. Doesn't use the prelude. Interesting. Trait copy. Because force ID doesn't implement copy. Okay, well we probably should fix that. So force ID derive all the same things here as the other ones do. Great. Okay, another whole level of problems. It's like when the compiler really lets everything go after the first lot of errors. Don't worry, this is the last lot of errors we have to deal with, usually. Function takes 3 parameters, but 2 are supplied. So, yes, the reason why is I changed this so that it needed something called a wrap type, so we knew which kind of world we're dealing with. And we know this, it's here, it's in self.wrap. So that's easy to fix. This function, so that's whether it's if it's that magical space world or if it's one of those production floors. It's an enumerator for those 2 options. This function takes 6 parameters, but 5 were supplied. What was my new one? I think it was a force identifier, wasn't it? So I guess we're going to use test force ID in that case. Same problem as before. I think that one's solved. It's just duplicating my errors. Oh, and there's lots more add spaceship problems here. We'll just use the force ID like 1 as well, or 105. Make that like a standard thing we use all the time. 2 spaceships both belonging to 105. Not that force ID is that important right now. This is the constant data for when we create a new sector at the moment. This is how they used to be made, so we just made them in startup. Wow, 15 errors now. Okay. Collection of type vect cannot be brought from an iterator out of over types. Yes, that's what the clone is for. confused why there's like a double reference here. Why is a double reference? I don't know. Probably turns out that read storage is already a reference. No, it returns an actual read storage, so we need that reference. Do we need to just go a star dot clone? That's the kind of thing I need to do. I'm not sure why I need to do that. Okay, we don't need to do that. Okay, I'm confused. Oh, I see. So that was okay. So I can dereference it here, but I need to specify that it's not only as a component, but also implements clone. So again, it's so great to have those compile errors to tell me this. So if it has this clone, then it has this function here called clone. That's what we're doing if you guys aren't using Rust very much. No variant or associated item player appears. Found for type, world instruction. Yeah, so the reason why is because this world instruction is, we're not supposed to use player appears, we're supposed to use perform action here, like so. So when I created this, I needed to do that. So this is just like, what things can you do with a world? Well, the only thing you can do right now is perform an action. Down the track I'll probably have lots of other things you can do, maybe. I don't know. It's turning out that everything is performing an action, so and then I just make a different action for every different thing I want to do. The full list of actions is over here, like changing the size of the floor, you know, building modules on the floor, building new spaceships is creating new cores, telling the world that there's a player that just appeared, moving the player's player input, is removing module and setting recipe. Those are the actions we have right now. Set recipe doesn't do anything yet. Oh, does it? I can't remember if I did that. Looks like it does something. Looks like it does lots of something. I need to expose that to the UI then, I guess. Okay, no variant or associated item. That's so you can choose what you're building. Okay, so there's a bunch of things missing here. So in space, what can we do? Well, we can now create a core. So this is how we do the kind of dynamic dispatch between, oh, you've got an action, but now you want to call a function in it. I needed to write this code so that it can do the static binding, I guess. There's probably some cool way of avoiding writing this, but I've done it, and I'm also using it as an opportunity to put a limit on what you can run on the production floor and what you can run in space, because a lot of these actions assume you're working on a production floor, and they'll blow up because the components will be missing if you try and run them in space, and vice versa. So create core is something you should only be running in space. What's the other one? Player appears needs to be running in space, and I think that was it, wasn't it? Great. So what was my problem here? The world wrap type. These are the production floor and spaceship. I need to write spaceship rather than just writing space. Did I need to write prod floor? Yeah, I did. Okay. Here. This function takes 6 parameters. I wonder how many of these I'm going to have to change. I just have to keep on running this force ID 105 in here for every one of my tests. And spaceship, it needs that at the end. I can just save it and it'll sort itself out. Great. add to player also needs a false ID at the end, so we'll just put that on the end. Oh, it didn't like the comma, the trailing comma that I left there a second ago. I need to delete that comma, so I just need a comma at the start, comma, then that. Okay. Add spaceship, false ID, player. Just pushing Control 5 now. Control V for paste. False ID. False ID. Let's try running this again. Oh, and yeah, this spaceship needs a false ID too. Everyone's false ID 105. We're getting there, we really are. How many have we got now? 6 to go. It's complaining. I just fixed that one. I think I fixed it while I was compiling, which is why it's still complaining. Perform action, what's missing? It's saying that you can't, you need to, what? Create core. It's probably complaining that create core is not an action. Ah, I see. So the problem is that I didn't wrap this correctly. So perform action needs to include in it an enumerator of which type of action it is. So you kind of need to say the action twice. An example I think is up here, or build from map. Like here, action place module, then the actual place module class. Because if you look at action, it's just a list of the different. It's the enumerator which has these types match the structure, which are both the same name. So you have to kind of say, basically say it twice. It's a bit hard to explain. Either it's really obvious to you, or it's a bit tricky to explain, depending on how well you know Rust. So perform action. I need to push the value of an enumerator, which is action create core, and then inside that enumerator I need the actual create core class like that, and that is happy now. And then I need to do the same trick a bit further down, or a bit further up, where I make the player appears one, action player appears, like so. Let's compile this. Match types. It expected a struct. Global world ID. I gave it a false ID. Sorry, obviously I got confused. What does this require? So this is a biped. So when you make a new biped, it needs to know which world it is in. Which world is it's like a parent. And there isn't one right now. I've never had a biped that's floating in space. I guess if it's floating in space, it should be the space world. So I'll put the space world ID in. Okay. Missing field false. So the thought about this is that if you've got a biped that's like a player, and they're like walking in a spaceship, they're somewhere in the spaceship. If the spaceship starts to move, I don't want the player to kind of glitch around. So I want to be able to say the player is in a particular place relative to the spaceship. And if you never change that and you keep moving the spaceship, the player's going to move around with the ship in a really nice and natural way. I don't have to every single frame say, yeah, the player has moved, and it's like. So once a player walks onto the deck of a spaceship, they become parented to it, which is what this value means. Is what are they parented to? So here we're saying they're parented to the origin of the sector, as opposed to within a ship. Sorry about that loud noise just there. There's a microphone in front of my face and I banged it. I'm sorry. Anyway. Now it's complaining we didn't say what the false was, which is going to be that false I put in there before. Test false ID. Okay, let's fix these imports. Doesn't use preload. Doesn't use space. Interesting, so we'll just put an underscore there. doesn't use outgoing. Fair, that was something that I had when I was testing. I don't think I need to say clear outgoing here. In fact, it's going to cause all manner of trouble. I'm surprised that worked okay. Interesting. Unused variable. Yeah, we got rid of that. Variable does not need to be mutable. Got rid of that. Let's try this again. Almost there. We might see a test fail spectacularly. Wonderful. Don't need a center queue here. Set it twice, the same thing. Mismatch types. Okay, so he speaks of false info, which we can give it. False info is a structure containing a false ID in it. I was thinking down the track we might have other things to remember about what false the ship is in. Like it might be in several functions, or that sort of thing. So I made a whole struct, but right now it just contains this ID number, so just say which player owns it, basically. Create next world ID. Yeah, we don't want to do that to the space world, we want to do that to the entire sector. So test sector. How much did I expose the sectors here? I completely exposed them, so I can just write in server like that. Let's close this window a little bit. Take in a sec. Great. So it's saying I can't create a player appears action because I've made some of the fields here private, and unless I make a constructor I need to make them public, so I'll do that. Oh, my computer sounds like it's doing some hard working, so that probably means it's compiling. It's just going to run. Ooh, exciting. Or I get a whole bunch of ownership errors. We'll find out. Okay. This is great. So it panicked because I added a bunch of extra components. When I added a bunch of extra components, I never actually added them to the space zone. So let's do that now. Open space. Up here in this list of things that the space zone has in it, I need to add some more components. So we need to register the instruction zone. We need to register the force info. And while we're at it, let's just put it in production floor as well, because I'm probably going to want that sooner or later. World wrap type, production floor build. We'll pop it at the end. What was it called again? Force info. Oh, we're not. We are. Okay. Why is it not known? I must have forgotten to expose it here in mod. No. Okay. I'm confused. That's really weird. I would have thought that would be public because of this one. Oh, of course, it's not my prelude, it's the specs one. This was wrong. Should not need those anymore. All this. Or probably even that. Okay, so we still need this into hash map. World events. And into hash map was part of the game map thing that I've just commented out. Game map serialize. But probably everything else isn't required. This is a way of creating something like a dictionary here in my game objects that I can then turn into a variant so I can send it to Godot more easily. It's just an enumerator with a bunch of types that I like to use, and variant in Godot has a lot more types, but these are the only ones I'm using so far. So it's my tricky way of interoperating without my simulation code knowing what a variant from Godot looks like. This is kind of what I expected. One test has failed, so all that coding, and I've only broken the one new test that I created, so that's like a huge win. That's why unit testing is so great. I can just hack away and know that I haven't made things worse. Called unwrap on a none value. Let's find out where. I'm getting too hot now. Open the window a bit more. Okay. Probably opened it too far. Well, we'll find out. Where do we unwrap on a null value? It's probably this top one here. So we're pushing an instruction to a world that doesn't exist. It's pushing it to the space world ID. So with a small ship, the space mute probably creates it, doesn't it? Oh yeah, the problem is this make comms thing. There's kind of a whole handler thing I could add to my tests to make them cleaner, and I might do that. What does make comms do again? Yeah, so either way we need it to run. We need this to run here in new. Either way. I think. Make comms is just setting up this kind of these queues that yeah. Well, probably a nicer thing to do is to make it so that push instruction, which is sending things to a world, in the case of my test, because I'd rather write code that's a bit worse just to make my life easier for testing purposes. For running, I'm more concerned, but for testing, I don't mind bending the rules a bit. And it's going to try and get the world. So, this make comms creates a world comms. Up here we try and get a reference to it, so if we returned a reference to it here, that could be useful. I wonder if insert returns a reference. Just bring up the hash map documentation to see what I can see if insert returns a reference to what we just put in. No, it does not. Okay. So this self.coms.get. Probably the nicest way to go about doing this would be the simplest way to go about doing this would be like if not self.coms.contains key world ID. If it doesn't yet have it, we're going to call this function self.makeComms, which is going to put that key in. And it does a bunch of setup stuff so that we can kind of talk to the world that exists in the sector. So we make it here, and then we should always find it here, and then this unwrap should never fail. We just made this world above. We should just made this connection, this comms. And that pain action will happen because this code should find it. Self.push instruction. Now it's just complaining that all the places that were before not mutable and now need to be mutable because we need to be mutable self because we are pushing to a map. Oh well, so much for that idea. Okay, so again the test fails, but it probably fails for a more interesting reason. Oh, no, it's not very similar. It tried to, so this time it's because the world doesn't exist. So here, assert self.hasWorld, something like that. Just so it's really clear what's going wrong. We had a function here. Client has world, that was what I was thinking of. Client has world, we assert that it has world ID. And then that way we get a nice clear message. So the problem that we're detecting is that we're detecting it in the constructor. I need to run this again because I just changed the code and now all the line numbers are off. Let's try that again. So I'm just trying to find my console I got rid of. I had a console that was showing me how cool you guys are. 10 of you, yay, hello. Testing. Okay. We don't have the world, but we will. So in survival core, inside this first push instruction, we're trying to push to the space world ID. So it's saying that the client doesn't even have the space world in it. Probably because it hasn't had any time. So maybe without using with small ship we should like have with empty, or because the problem here is we need to, let's just say, let's make it with player in space one, because we need to give it a small amount of time to just synchronize so the client knows what's going on. That's what's going on here, is that we don't have this perform specific tick, so the client doesn't even have a space world in it. And space. And this test detector is very similar to the other one. It's need to call a function which adds it. So we'll just copy this entire thing. Space mute, add spaceship. So we're going to add biped, which is my other function. So, you know, this stuff's painful because I have to create a minimal test for all this stuff that works. But down the track it's good because I can create lots of tests that use the same setup, and it gets easier and easier to make them as time goes on. Whereas if you don't write unit tests like this, you just making all the initialization every time yourself. As you perform each test, you have to keep repeating this again and again and again, actually by hand setting up the right kind of universe. So it does pay huge dividends, but it's just a little bit painful initially, and this is really not that bad. Add player. We have some examples of adding players. Let's just grab one. Here's one. I'm literally copying from the same place. That's not going to really help me very much. Yeah, we'll use this one. I just want to hold on to that top line. Oh, we can just do it by copying it from above. So this spaceship thing needs to have access to the world, which you get from space mute, and then here's the location of the player, false ID. Make the test world, give it one tick to tell the client, which will send a synchronization message, and then the client will know about the player floating in space. There's a new test sector, and then a bit further down we get to the test, which is down here. Now we have a player as well, which is kind of nice, even though we don't really care. Oh, I was using a player appears action here. What do I do with this information? Let's just move this player appears action into with player in space. So rather than calling this space add player, we're going to push an instruction, but we're not going to push it. Kind of want to push it from the server. Yeah. Okay, so that's test code for later. Once again, I'm not going to worry about this later test code stuff right now. I'm going to just focus on what I'm doing, which is trying to test the core construction. It's very easy to get diffuse on this and just start spreading your attention everywhere. Okay. Don't see the error message. Okay. So it's complaining that the no spaceships were created on the client. Okay, part of the problem is I don't actually let any time pass where we can tell the client that there are spaceships. So if we give it some time by performing a couple of ticks, that should fix their problem, hopefully. This compilation takes a while, doesn't it? Oh wow, that's like a... oh, that's probably a different test. Oh, we ran out of IDs of some kind. I think I might have put a limit on how high the IDs can go. Yeah, I said that the world IDs have to stay underneath 51 because our IDs space is too small. I forgot that I'd done this. So I got this concept of world IDs on the client being really small. Yeah. Again, I don't want to worry about this problem for now. This is just, I'm hoping that later on I can limit how many worlds there are that the client knows about, but that's again advanced networking stuff that I don't want to worry about. So let's just increase the error message and then go back to my code that specified the world ID. You'll remember we started the search at 200, so that's why I hit it straight away, because 200 is greater than 51. So the idea is that you might have a sector that contains 1,000 spaceships, but a particular player doesn't need to know about all 1,000. So we can actually relabel the IDs that the server is sending to the client to some other numbering system with a map per client. I thought that'd be useful. I have not bothered to implement it yet. And so the number we use internally is 32-bit, and the number we send over the network is only 8-bit, which holds the numbers up to 255. So anyway, this next world ID, let's start with a much smaller number like 40, and then we won't hit that limit. Okay, what error did we get this time? The error we got was that it worked. Look at this. The client has got a spaceship in it. Let's have a close look at the test. So that's the success. So we said that the player wanted to create a new spaceship at 1010, and here is the new spaceship on the client at 1010 with the correct details. Wonderful. Hooray! So I can go down here into my reference and say that is what we expect to see is one spaceship. We can do the same thing here. So I think this first one is, which one did I do first? Yes, I did the server first, so now we're going to find out if the client got that spaceship too, which it should do because it gets the same actions. What else does it need to do? It needs to create a floor in that location. We need to actually write some code that creates a world. Okay, so in the second case, the server knew about the spaceship and the client did not. Check that it was in the place I thought it was. Yes. I wonder why that happened. It's possible that the actions aren't being synchronized properly yet, and that all we're seeing from the other one is the data synchronization type thing going on. What should happen is that the client should get told about this. I wonder if, let's just try something which is giving it more time with the player in space. Just give it a few more ticks for the client and server to realize that they both exist before we send this action. Let's see if that makes it pass. My reasoning is a bit difficult to explain. No, that didn't help. Okay. So now the next question is, are we creating an action that sends one to the other? So in our function here, relay messages, we need to actually write out what messages we're sending. So we're going to print line, we're going to say we're in relay messages. Who to who. So we're relaying messages from source to dest. We're going to put two ID numbers in here, and we're going to specify a message. It's going to need a debug output to view it. So ID, dest ID, and the message goes like that, and then we'll see what the console has to say about this. We should see some actions flow back and forward, but I don't think we will. So we're going to change these from client IDs to being the internal types, which are just numbers. There's a lot of messages sent. Okay, so it tells us the server state. Something called space world update, which is data. World sync tick. Grid chunk update, which is like the internals of a ship. Some more ticks. More grid chunk update. Here's our action submit. And that's the one that creates the core here. And it probably says a future time it's going to create it, doesn't it? Yeah, it's going to happen action counter 3. So that sent it in and it was processed. So I think part of the problem is that we haven't actually given it enough time here for, it's like essentially latency before it builds. The networking system actually waits a certain number of ticks for the communications to finish, so I didn't wait long enough for the client and the server to both reach the tick number where it should build it. But it's very interesting that it happened already on the server before it happened on the client. I think the ticks must be out of sync, like off by 1, like the client's behind. Yeah, so that passes now, so if I set this to 3, I wonder if it was off by 1. I bet it was, that's what it was. That the server was exactly 1 tick ahead of the client. No. 4? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Oh, 4. I bet 4 will work. Come on. Lucky number 4. I write a for loop to try all the different numbers here. Yeah, so it takes 4 ticks to actually consume this action. 4 are required. I don't want this test to fail again for this reason, so I'm going to put the number right up to 10. Okay, so we can build a spaceship by creating, if the client creates this action, they are authorized to create a spaceship basically for anybody for free in any location they want that isn't fully initialized. What more do we want to do with that? We're going to need to be able to make a world inside that spaceship so you can actually see it or do things with it. If we have a look in Singleton, when we add a spaceship, we also give it a world ID number, and then we do this whole production floor creation thing. If I was to just go right ahead and do that on the server, it would kind of work. Because the server would just say to the client, look, there's a world that exists, let me just tell you about it. Actions don't normally deal with a whole sector. There's this communication between sectors and how sectors implement like different worlds, like how floors affect the overall space and so on. There's this communications that just keep on being a big pain in my ass in terms of my design. I'm not sure exactly how to handle those. I think we had some events in here, didn't we? Handle events. So when a floor is changed, for instance, that's when we pass it across to the space. And so we need another event for when a ship is created. That's probably the easiest thing to do. So we'll just do that real quick. So if a ship created, it's going to need a world ID, or core created, ship created, core created, whatever. And it's going to look, the code which is in this is going to look a lot like what's in singleton. So it's going to look a lot like build static sector. We need to get the world we're interested in, and we don't want to add any modules yet, though we'll need to add a core. So we'll need to add a production type for a core. So we'll do that in a second. We're going to create a core. Okay, so and this adjust floor is what makes the floor the shape it is. So if there's a ship created in the space sector, we turn around and we find that world ID, and we're going to get or create the world ID, like so. World ID 1 equals, great, that works. Add contents, so we need to adjust the floor, these are two actions. So you'll recall that we created a new floor that went from -4 to 4. From -4 to 4, we add that floor, we don't remove anything, so just make a square floor like this. And so the adjust floor action is in our actions. So if I go over and look at this, then the adjust floor takes a box and has some flags saying, for instance, add, and then it understands how to modify the floors of a ship to add that or whatever. And it has lots of unit tests, and it's very well tested, and we've seen it work in lots of my demos and GIFs, so it's pretty ace. And it's what leads to, let me just load some GIFs. What it looks like is something like this. So add floor allows you to like draw a rectangle, and it like creates this floor on the ground inside a ship, and so we're just using it to create a small rectangular floor. Boof. It does a bit more than that because it actually makes walls and stuff. It's quite neat. Anyway, so we're going to use that to create a simple one. I need to import prelude here, don't I? Use create. Which is going to make a lot of this other stuff redundant, probably. Probably don't need any of this stuff now. Anyway. So all the sector com stuff is still required. Okay, so that's my imports, just reducing the number of imports a lot by using this prelude. Just get all that. Put it here. Move this down so all my crate stuff's together. Great. That I think is done already. Yep, excellent. So that's our imports. What I was up to in here in sector was that event to create the small ship. So if a ship is created with a world ID in this list of events, so this event is like a way of one world sends an event up for the sector to handle, and then it can do things to everybody. We don't want to add any modules yet, but we're going to need to create a core, which is going to be some structure in the middle of a ship that is like the upgradable thing. It's like going to be a big model of like I don't know, lowered floors, and we'll do all sorts of cool stuff with that. It's like the heart of a ship, and it's what you're going to be upgrading as you play the game. The core of your ships. It's kind of like a lab in Factorio, and that you pipe all your good stuff to the core to be used to upgrade it. We'll figure it out. I just got another idea, which is you might have something you specifically build, like processing submodules in your ship, and then you activate them from the core to get the upgrades, and if you lose the submodules, then the upgrades become unavailable or something. So your upgrades are actually embodied in structures that you're building around your ship as you go. That would be kind of cool, as opposed to just clicking on the core and pushing upgrade. Need to create a core. I think that's everything here. So we just need to make sure we create this event and send it out. If we have a look at how the other ones are made, like floor changed, you can see you got this thing called comms ship to space. So we get this code, and we can push an action. So this is the adjust floor action, and this is sending something to the sector. So and here's an example of, like, I got so worried about this solution, but actually it's a really simple solution that I've coded up. I just forgot about it because it's been a few weeks. So really not a big deal. So in here we build the spaceship, and then before we quit the action we need to tell the sector to also do its part to build the spaceship. So it's going to need to push a ship created, one of these ship created events that I haven't even defined what that is yet. So we're going to push one with the world ID. So let me just put that in here. Dink. And the world ID is going to be, well, self.worldID. It's the world we just created. We need to fetch this thing called sector comms, which is a resource. Okay, so I think this sector comms needs to be in the prelude. Does it? Kind of does internally, but I guess we won't worry too much about that right now. Push this self world ID. Why is this red? Oh, it needs to say world ID. Okay. So this is what we need to define inside a sector event, which is an enumerator. So it's got these types in it. It's funny how everything has a world ID in it. Yes, looks like a pattern, doesn't it? So this enumerator value, ship created, has a world ID, which is a global world ID. Great. So when you create an action and the action is in the space world, it sends a message up from the space world to the sector, and from the sector it gets beamed back down and creates that world, which creates a flaw in the world, which means that my test now I should check to see if that flaw exists on both client and server. So this test actually will do that. Client has world. Well, that already passed. The next question is, does the client have a flaw? How do we prove that the client has a flaw? The simplest way is to actually just ask it to render itself. So I've done this before in the floor tests. In floor tiling, no, not floor tiling. Build floor. That action I showed before, adjust floor. I had some unit tests that do this. Right, these are the different shapes of the spaceship. And assert floor pattern. What is assert floor pattern doing? It runs these, and then asks the floor to render a floor wall string. What is a floor? It's a production floor. So I need to expose that function for my use. So we'll just hide this, and we're going to put this on the right hand side, and then we're going to close it here and go back to our test, which is test sector, and in test sector we're going to add a test. We're going to do things like this. So we might as well just copy this assert floor pattern straight up, something like this, assert floor pattern, and we're going to make a world, a test for a particular world. So test for assert floor pattern, and has an expected string and has a world ID. World ID is a global world ID. What does it output? It doesn't output anything. and the floor is going to equal self dot client world. I think we called it client world. Floor. Yeah, floor client is what we called it. So self dot floor client. So we want to get the world, that particular world ID, which is the spaceship contents. So we need the spaceship contents from ourselves. So we need a reference to ourselves for this. So we need to get a reference to our own selves. That's our world, actually, really, strictly speaking. And then so read the description. That's what we're doing. Get a production world so we can compare the floor against what we expect. We need to render a floor wall string. So if you have a look at what render a floor wall string looks like, you saw what the output is. It looks like that. Might be nicest actually with this latest stuff to just print the world contents. No, not that one. There's one that makes a nice little map. We'll just use render to string here, which is something you can use for any production floor. So we'll use that. So let the floor string equal like that. And then we're going to assert that the floor string is what we expected. And so we can then go back down here and say test sector, and we're going to say assert floor pattern. We're not going to specify one because in a second I'm going to get a nice pretty one rendered for me, and I'm going to just copy it across if it looks okay. And it's going to be the new world ID, and we're going to see if the client's version of that pattern looks like what we expect it to be. I think I got this one the wrong way. I did. World ID goes first, then the string. So get rid of this, put it here. Okay, I don't need that assert. I don't know why this is crying. Oh no, it's happy now. Okay, so we'll just close this again. Ship to space, push, sector event, ship created. We didn't import sector event. Import it from sector events. Expected value, found module sector. Okay, so this should be self, not sector, because we are a sector in this code. So now let's notice some variables that don't need to be mutable. Let's just make that happy. Yep, it's the same one twice. Let's see what the floor pattern looks like inside the spaceship when the test runs. So it should be a yes, there's a floor pattern. Let's see the difference. Wow, check that out. So here's the spaceship's floor, and so you can see you've got, you know, it looks like the ship is one tile too wide. I'm not sure. That crosses the 0, 0 origin of the world. I think I might have decided to just draw the cross without taking up any coordinates. So this is 0.0 and this is -1, and it's actually the ship's drawn larger, but I'm not sure. No, that's right. I think building floor is inclusive, and so the floor box really does go from -4 to +4 inclusive, and that's why it's a 9 by 9 ship. So here we are, we've got a 9 by 9 empty floor. So let's just copy the string and make it our expected string here. So expected should now be blam, like this. and that should now pass. So what it's saying is when you build this ship, we expect to see this empty floor. And it passes. Ah, that's very nice. So in this particular unit test sector, we've made it possible. Let's just have a look at this test again. We've made it possible that if you call this action called create core and you specify a particular location and a world ID that you can get at runtime quite easily, blammo, you get a spaceship. That'd be fun to get into Godot. Let's see what our Godot situation is like. I should be able to run the game and it should just run as before without having any new functionality where I put these patch files. Okay, so behind this screen here, if I move the screen on your view, you can see there's two batch files on my desktop here, server and game.bat. So I'm just going to click on those a bunch of times. So we'll run the server and we'll run the game. Okay, so when you looked at the server, it didn't compile. I think the console. Oh yes, it's this problem with nightly. One of my libraries didn't work with nightly. I wonder if I should maybe the new version of nightly is going to fix this problem. I don't know. Okay, so we can't compile while that's working. Let's have a look at the rust up bindings. It's just loading over here. Okay, so here's the Godot engines. Well, it doesn't really matter what it's saying. My computer's busy upgrading Rust, which is taking a bit of processing power, I understand. What was I going to do next? Oh, that's right. I was going to look at the UI scene, and I was going to think about whether I wanted to add a button here to build a ship. Which I thought would be quite funny to just throw a button and it does that. So let's just throw a button in. Okay, this is not duplicating the way I expected it to. Or it is, but I can't see it. No, it's not. Duplicate. Again, it's been too long since I've last done this, so some of the things I'm thinking about I've forgotten how to do. Button, build ship. Okay, let's have a look at the signal. Node signals on button flight console pressed. We'll delete the signal. Whoops. That's not what I wanted. Delete this. Disconnect. And then on pressed. And I believe all these buttons go back to this build script here. So they link to this. Yes, and it's created this new function called on button build ship pressed. So how do we enter build? It was like it creates a little special cursor for that, and when you click it sends it to the relevant ship. I think maybe we'll just say enter build ship, right? Enter ship build. So we use UI dot into ship build. So what is UI? UI is a node which is in the root called UI. Okay, so if we look at root and we go down to UI, there's a script here, and it has enter floor build, enter floor delete. So we're going to add another function called func. Okay, and something called ship build. So how do we do this? Cursor default. So we have to exit all, and then we have to enter a particular one, which is cursor ship build. We're going to make a new cursor for ship building. Let's try that. Cursor ship build. So you'll understand what cursors are in my point of view in a moment, I imagine, as I go through this process. So we've got these ideas of cursors in the Godot code. So having come here for Rust, you're going to find out that actually I write my user interface in Godot, and I use GTScript for that because I'm like, well, there's no way they're going to have performance problems with just user interface really, and it seems silly to something so fluid to code up any other way than a script. So we want something here called cursor ship build. Let's put it this we're going to use a node. We're going to call it exactly what I said before, cursor ship build. If we have a look in UI in the canvas layer, we've got these different things I call cursors. They're basically a scene that follows a cursor when that particular thing is active. So if we're going to add a new child node, and it's a spatial node 2D create, and its name is cursor ship build. And if you have a look at most of these ones don't have anything in them, but the hover one does. Yeah, these things are all in 2D, and then from the 2D one, each one has its own script about what it does when it has a cursor. So if we just have a look at cursor place, which has nothing in it, we have a look at the script. It's currently updating, it's always updating the tracking of this other cursor. Gosh. I'm wondering if this is old code. I think this is. I think this is like code for cursor place isn't being used. Let's go back to UI again for a second. Enter build. Placement ghost. Set ghost. Cursor place. Enter build. Oh, welcome. Welcome to Pengo Array and your party. It's nice to have you guys along. Exciting. Hi everybody. That's pretty crazy. Feel free to chat. We just added the ability to add spaceships. Hey, thank you for rating. Added the ability to add spaceships to this game. I'm just trying to figure out how to make a button that does it. Hey, it's awesome. I'm using Rust and Godot together. I was just adding some simple UI actions. So there was a way to place a new spaceship, and there was a button that did it, and a cursor, and so on for placement. So that's all very exciting. And now I'm just stuck in the moment of trying to figure out exactly how my existing placement of structures works. Where's my UI? My UI at the moment is liable to blow up if I try and push the wrong button. Let's see if the server launches yet. Because last time I tried, we still got this nightly problem. Yeah, so nightly's not compiling. Let's edit this. Edit notepad. So what brings you to the server, Pengo? Do you just tend to raid different people, or have you been watching for a while? What's the story? I'm just going to change this so it uses stable, because that particular library doesn't seem to work in nightly. And then we'll try it for game. Edit with notepad. Again, I'm going to change this to stable. Hopefully that doesn't cause any problems. there's an array there's a library called nd array that doesn't seem to compile because of a multiplication library it uses that doesn't work in nightly. Oh, cool. Also, awesome, Pingo. What are you coding up? Server. And once this compiles, I should be able to run the game. Yeah. I haven't done a great deal of raiding myself. Well, to put it another way, I've never done raiding yet. I probably should figure it out. My viewership's still a bit small for me to even need to worry about it. I just kind of say, okay, thanks, bye. You're coding an overlay to show what you're playing. Nice. Oh yeah. I'm not sure if you guys are getting desktop audio here. Oh, okay, yep, nice. That's pretty cool. Nice one. So you've probably got a lot more users than you normally have as well. Just like I've suddenly got a lot more users than I've had. Oh well, I can live with sleeping viewers. They're just the same as my normal viewers. I'm sure half the people who are watching me are asleep too. Exciting. Anyway, so the server's running. They just like to listen to the sultry sound of my voice. Or something, right? Anyway. I have to just keep believing. Because, oh my god, otherwise you just die in shame. Yeah, so what you see here is a server that's written completely in Rust. It's running a game simulation, and it's compiling a DLL also using Rust, and then that links to the server, and then this is Godot here, which is an engine, and the whole lot together looks, kind of like this game, or there's two ships flying, that sort of stuff. And today I've been doing a lot of technical kind of text-based coding so far, to allow you to build a new ship, because until now the ships you get at the start are the kind of hard-coded ones. And so I thought it'd be fun to quickly build up the UI in Godot, and so you kind of raided me just as I was starting to do the Godot part. I've upgraded my Rust recently, so well, I think if you're quite a confident programmer, it's really not too bad. But you need a confidence in using like programming languages like Rust. Otherwise, it's like completely terrifying, I imagine, for a lot of people. I need to save my work and quit out of Godot, unfortunately. Quit to project list, because it's holding a DLL. I can link now. Let's try that again. I'm not finding it particularly painful, but I've been doing a lot of Rust. It's definitely harder to use Rust than it is just to use a scripting language. So here's what the game looks like at the moment. Ooh, that's exciting. Oh, but it's not particularly surprising, because I hadn't coded that up yet. And that's okay. So that's what the game looked like already. By the way, Pingo, if you are interested, Godot and Rust, how I use Godot and Rust to explore space. This is my little tutorial. Oh, actually, that's more of my story about me. Stories. Published. I need to finish that one. I've got lots of things I need to write. There's so much more writing to get back into. Gorgeous Godot games in Rust. This is kind of a tutorial I've written on the subject of how to do it. And of course, you guys are most welcome to come along and join my Discord channel, and I've got a whole bunch of people who like to chat in here about how to go about doing this. I was just trying to look at the settings. There's some way of getting settings in here. I think the settings are gone. Oh well. Join my Discord and chat with me, and that'd be really awesome. There's a lot of people in here building games, and that extends to everybody watching this stream. Please feel free to open up the chat window and click on the link to Discord and come talk to us about making games. Anyway, Gorgeous Godot games in Rust. Still got 45 viewers, so I still got 35 new victims who joined with you, Pingo. Thank you. Because I had about 10 before you came along. Everyone else leaves. Anyway, Godot, that's where we were at. So I was halfway through, when you joined us, I was halfway through modifying my UI. So it had a way of creating a cursor, so I had a way of throwing an action, because the last thing I did was make a unit test that let you place a spaceship, but it was a unit test which is very theoretical from the point of view of like a player. So I wanted to make a new cursor which was for building ships. So the previous one was called cursor place, and it has that was more the script I was looking for. So what's going on with this one's script? This is really weird. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with close all. I don't know what's going on with their subscene. I don't want to think about it too much right now. So this script here is my reference script, and the script I want here, I'm going to add oops, not a child node, add there's a button somewhere to add a script. There we go. Here. GT script, inheritance from node 2D, template default. Yes. And it's going to basically be the same as this other one. So it extends track cursor. That sounds good. Building item doesn't need to know. Building item doesn't need to have facings. Well, we might leave that there for now. Doesn't need a placement ghost. Yeah, we're going to need to know about this placement ghost down the track. We don't need any icons, so we'll get rid of those. In fact, we don't need ready at all then. That's like called, for those people not familiar with Godot, that's called when the thing is first instance is started up. Don't need any of that stuff, so we can put pass in here. Pass, which is also commented out. Process is called every frame. If it's not visible in the tree return, update the moving. If it has a ship, we don't want a ship. In fact, inside of this track cursor, we're going to be constantly trying to find ships. Yeah, we're going to have to implement a new version of this mouse tracking that right now it like tries to find the nearest spaceship and then like moves relative to that, but we don't want that. Probably? I don't know, maybe we do want that for placing ships. Because if you want to place a ship in the docking port or inside another ship, it rotating to match the first one probably is quite useful. Yeah. Okay, cursor ship build. Let's not worry about that right now. If you push the rotate button, we do rotating. We'll leave that code in from the placement into build. If the name is an icon, show. So I want this stuff all to remain. So I'm just quietly deleting all the stuff that we don't want from the previous building thing. On left click, we're going to do a build, It doesn't matter if we have a ship or not, actually. Exit mode, if it's not visible, return. Building item becomes null. Hide on right click is default, yep. So that's our building. And then this left click becomes the part that's most important. So we need to know where the world is. There's something called ships. The ship star world. This star world here is really important. Let me just open VS Code because that's my main link to Rust. So we're in the right one. Yep. Is this search going to work? Because it's not doing much on the... I was expecting to find it in all sorts of paths. I think this is too busy starting up to actually... It's downloading something. I don't know what it's downloading. Finally it's listening to me. So here I've got an example of... Oh, track cursor already getting the star world. Here. It's getting something called all ships. Okay, so we have access to all ships, so we can call functions on it. So, and that'll be important in a second. You'll see why. So, here on left click, we want to, in a particular global position, we want to call all ships. And we're going to call a function saying build new spaceship, or build new spaceship. Always feel like I should say it like the dude from Lego, 1990 spacesuit guy. Spaceship, but spaceship. Now this global position, I believe, is in screen coordinates. On left click global position, what global position do we use? Yeah, event position. So that's, but we've got this concept of what's called a track cursor, close others, and so it should know where we are. Should know something called a ship local position. So it projects to a particular location in 3D space. Do I keep that? So yeah, we know where we are relative to a particular ship. We want to know where we are relative to space in general, so we can pass that through. Maybe the easiest way to do that is to ask the ship to transform that vector back. So that's what ship local does. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember how to reverse this. Ship gets canvas transform. I need to find a way to reverse this transformation. I need to have a vector. I could just recalculate it right at that moment in time. Get global mouse position. What does this do for us? I think it gives it to me in okay, so that's probably a function in Rust. Well, let's just go back to the source of truth, which is going to be doing the calculation ourselves. So on left click, we're going to get the global position of the mouse cursor here. We're going to intersect it with the ground plane, which is what this code does. So you just specify where the ground plane is. So for our location, we use an up vector, y is up, and then here we say where it's going to be, where the ship is. So we just say, actually go and do it at 0, 0, which is underneath all the ships. And then the intersect is on from and to. How do we calculate from and to? We calculate them here, like so. I should probably put this in a function inside track cursor, but do I lose an RPC high level API for network? No, I use a very low level API. It's called Cobalt. For Rust, there is a high level one built into Godot. I don't use it. Cobalt RS. Now this is the original Cobalt, and last time I checked, 13 days ago. That's great. Does that mean? No, it's not the Cobalt I was thinking of. Anyway, let's look at me. So my repositories, I've got a fork with the one I use. Cobalt RS. Here we are. This repository. It's just for sending data, basically. It's like UDP, but it has a bit of extra stuff in there that makes it like a streaming TCP type thing. We send multiple different streams, but still quite low level. Yeah. And then I use Serde and bin code. Bin code. And that allows you to serialize basically anything through any binary pipe from Rust, which is what I'm using for my networking. And there's lots more detail to it. And past streams cover some of the stuff to do with networking somewhat. Hopefully you can get some use out of that. You're most welcome. Feel free to drop into the Discord I mentioned earlier if you want to ask more specific questions, because I can't go into too much detail while talking about this other stuff because it's like difficult. On left click, we find the location where there's an intersection here, which is on the ground plane. We're going to build a new ship at that location. Let's just look at my example of how to interact with this. I don't want to maximize it. I'm so used to using cursor keys like this, but it doesn't work for when I'm talking to you guys, because it uses up the whole screen and you can't see the bottom. I should probably set up some sort of tiling window manager for streaming to take care of that problem. Okay. Camera from to intersect. If it's null, well, it can't be null. Cursor local pos. So we can intersect, I guess, as a 3D location at this point, which is great. And so we only care about the X and Z locations here. So if we go back into Godot and we have a look in cursor ship build, we're going to pass this intersect location. We're going to build a new ship at intersect.x, intersect.y, intersect.z. But in all these cases, I built a dictionary. So x is intersect x, y is intersect y, and z is intersect z. You don't do Discord. The Discord is just a little bit higher up. X, Y, Z. Yep. I'm happy with that. Okay. So the next thing is we need to define this function, build new spaceship. It's not defined yet in Rust. We don't need a building item, we haven't got one of those. Let's make it. So, let me just flick back to Sea Lion. Where did I put that? Where did I put that window? Here we go. So the ship that I just modified, I really should have committed at some point along here. Let's just quickly commit. Wow, I've changed a lot of files. We'll just stage all that real quick. That way we've kind of got a base position. If anything goes wrong, I can restore to that. So here's all the stuff we've done already. So in my test, as you recall, or if you're new here, you wouldn't know this. In my test, I create a sector which has just a player in it, and then I create this thing called an action that specifies the spaceship is here, and then I wait a short time, and both the client and server are back in sync, and they know that there are particular components here. There's a spaceship, and so on, and the client knows about a world, and it has a certain floor pattern, which is really odd because last time I was here, this had a floor pattern showing, and now it's gone. Oh, I see what's wrong. This is almost hilarious. I put this constant in completely the wrong place. I need to write expected here, and I need to go down here, and I need to paste what I just saw here. There we go. That test was kind of hilariously wrong. It would have been funny when I made the second test. Anyway, you'll recall that we need a new function. So the place the function has to go is in bridge, and it has to go into the star world link. So this Rust file, this Rust code here, which has this name star world link. If you read my tutorial, which is also linked in the chat, I linked it a bit earlier. Let me just link it one more time because you probably missed it. It's a Medium article here. Paste. So that Medium article I just linked in the chat tells you about how to get started with Godot and Rust. But essentially, this macro exposes this from the DLL and registers it so Godot can see it. And then the star world, the script here, specifies the name star world link here. And so anything that has this hash export you can call from Godot. And so in my script, I just quite happily and cheerfully called this new function build new spaceship. So now I just need to quietly export a function with that name, and we'll be able to call it. So hashtag export, and function is going to be build new spaceship, and it takes a immutable self. It looks kind of like this. Now I'm just going to go across to those two arguments of the default that Godot gives you, and then because I passed in a dictionary, I should be able to pull out the dictionary as well. Here's an example of pulling out such a dictionary. So let's split this vertically, and I want to basically get X and Y and Z locations kind of like this. So build a new spaceship like that, has params, which is a dictionary. The reason why I'm doing it like this is because it was the first way I could get it to work, and I haven't bothered to find a nicer way. In theory, you should be able to you shouldn't have to write them in a dictionary to pass them through this layer. You should be able to pass them as arguments and put all the arguments out here by name, etc. Your mileage may vary. My own experience was that it was too painful and I got frustrated, so I just took a shortcut I found what worked, and I just stopped. So we're going to want the ability to use a float, I guess. So get a float. we won't call it a float, we'll call it an F32. And we'll say have an option with an F32 in it. We're going to try and cast this as an F32. F32. I shouldn't need a map now. Here. I think this will work. Anyway, we'll find out if it works or not soon enough. X, Y, and Z. And then once we've got these three values, the next thing we need to do is make an event out of them and post them into the sector. So if we have a look at ship link, we can see it's doing something similar. So if we got, let's just use this boilerplate. So we expect some X, some Y, and some Z. So I might just, yeah. So X, Y, and Z lock. Bam. Delete that. And the action we want to create is the one from the test. So let's just pop that over here for a second. So the action we want to create is this one here that pushes an instruction for perform action, create core. So the action equals, and we want all that. Okay, so we don't create it at 1010, we create it at the provided location, X lock Z, whoops, Z lock, and then world ID, that's going to be our star world ID. Oh no, that's not correct. We need to find a world ID, if you'll remember, from the server. We won't even know what the world ID should be on the client. And this is where I was like feeling like I should just hack it up for now, because I want to be fast and easy. So we'll just assume that the client and the server are completely in sync and that they both know what world ID to use. This is really invalid in the long term, but for now it's going to work just fine probably. We let the client choose the world ID. It's just like all sorts of alarms are screaming in my head about that idea, but I'm just going to let it slide for now. The reason why is you should never really let clients choose anything. In a multiplayer game, the clients should only predict, and they don't have any authority at all, whereas here we're giving it a bit of authority. In the future, the client's going to send something like a 0 in here, or some other null value, and the server's going to receive the action and put the right ID number in, and then send it out again. I haven't written that logic on the server yet, so I'm putting it on the client. New world ID. What false ID shall we use? Let's use that 105 value I keep using everywhere, which is what the player was created with anyway. False doesn't matter yet, it's just something I put in for the future. So that's how we create an action. And then once we have this, we have something called instructions. Do we have self.instructions here? We have state sync, and state sync we probably need to get okay, so in the physics process here we create the instructions. And if we have some instructions, we perform player input. I see, so we don't store this queue of instructions anywhere, we just try and get it. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that it's set up, or we're going to not bother to. This ability to get instructions from the sector is how we're going to send events. So that's how we're going to tell the world. We need to basically, we've got this thing called a sector, and we need to tell it that we want to do something. And so we need to push the thing we want to do into this thing called instructions, which is what this code up here is doing. World.get instructions. Yeah, so dot and then world get instructions cloned. I get the feeling this is code that I wrote before that I was just like trying to hack it up at the time. I might just fix it now. So what is this instructions? It's this array queue, but I think I have an instructions list. I created something called a world instruction queue here. So that's what we want. It's one of those. So and these are like thread safe, easy to copy instruction queues that all, whenever you write to one of them, any of them can read it back, that sort of thing. So I've got lots of places where I write to it, and only one place where I read from it, which is when I'm about to like do things in the world. And we're going to make an option that contains one of these instruction queues. And then in here I'm going to say that it's none. And then down here where we have that big block of code you saw before in physics process, it's it's like if we don't have it already, we need to run all this code. If sum dot instructions is none dot is none. If we don't have the instructions yet, then we set it up here. If self, we set it up like this. This isn't like, there's a more rusty way of doing that. I think you can like say or else and so on, but it'll do just fine. I'm going to put that in a nice little routine down here. Do we need sector for any other reason? Yeah, okay. So that sets up the instructions, and then we can just now go if we have instructions, which is equal to self.instructions. If we have the instructions, we can push them. And that finally means we can go down here to the place where we actually have something else to do with the instructions. We could say if we have some instructions, like that, and now we can push. So if we have some instructions, somewhere to push our new instruction, if self.instructions is actually some, we can unwrap them and push them. This perform action up here. Cannot build new spaceship. Okay. Oh, I'm glad I've written all that down. Now there's a round bracket missing. Nice to see you, Tato, on the Discord. I'm glad you made it through the whole process and jumped across. Hope you have fun on Discord. I probably should have shown off the place where Datto joined as opposed to the chat I hadn't caught up with. Anyway, wow, that tapping on my desk is quite loud on the microphone. Sorry, guys. Okay, I kind of redline a bit here, don't I? I probably should. It's okay. Could not build a new spaceship. Create core. Okay, I think I've actually got enough here for it to work now. Which would be pretty amazing. Let's find out how it breaks. So I need to quit Godot back out to the menu before I can do anything with the DLL. So quit the project list. Yes, I might just go into here and run build S2 core. We've got a very similar problem here with Nightly, so I need to edit my configurations and modify it so that building S2 core uses stable. It's the problem with one of my libraries isn't working in Nightly right now. Test sector. Okay, so I was going to close all these, close all in group. Okay, so there's no test sector here. We need to use our own sector. We don't have that here in this block of code. If I want to get sector, I'll need to go up to the physics process and get it this other way here. Now this is like a huge hack. I wonder what we're trying to do is we're trying to submit, like we're trying to call perform action. I'm just going to quick look at where perform action is actually processed. Perform action here, here. It's inside world sync. And so it's coming off the queue of instructions. So it gets pushed into the sender into an action submit, and then action submit gets sent across to the client and received in process message, which happens inside a sector. And then we call world.submit action. But before we do, we probably should pre-process the submit message. So pub function so we're going to pass in an action. Well, we're going to pass in an action submit, which is a particular kind of class that knows how to manage itself. And optionally we'll pass out an action submit. And so it's possible that the server's going to block it. So this is where the server gets a chance to think about the action and say, is this valid or not? Yeah. And so the general flow is going to be let checked action equal self.preprocess action. This is where we're going to, that hack that I was just talking about, I was going to immediately remove it by doing this. So we're going to pre-process the action here to check that it has the right world ID or whatever, and then put that in as a submitted action. So if the check succeeded, equal this. So if it does succeed, then we're going to pass it on, otherwise you're just going to ignore it at that point. So, which is fine because the client expects to receive it back from the server if it's going to act on it. Once you submitting an action, like when you push the button and click on the UI, that's all the client does, and then it mysteriously receives an action back saying, hey, you should do this thing in the future where a building gets built. It's like it doesn't even know that it was itself that caused that. So putting in a black hole is currently okay. So preprocess action, and this is always going to return some action, whatever. That's some action. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to say match. Well, yeah, match action. We're going to specifically match for no, yes, no, action submit. It's the action itself inside. So match action dot action, and we're interested in action create world. Action. This is the one we're interested in, called create core. Yeah. And so what we're just going to do here is we're going to update the create dot, and the one we're interested in is called world ID, and it equals self dot next world ID, like this. That way the world ID is being set by the server. And if there's any other kind of action, we do nothing. That's fine. And I need an arrow here. And it might be that later there are situations where the client really can specify world ID. Okay. So what this means is all that stuff to do with the world ID that I hacked in on here should not be necessary, because the server's going to take care of it. And down here where I specify new world ID, I can just specify, 0 or 1 or, some sort of temporary invalid value. I'm not sure what to write in. I've got a star world. Space world ID, that's what I was looking for. That's currently 0. We can just make another one which is invalid world ID, and give it some number. Let's just call it 2. Wow, 12. I don't know. What does one choose for invalid? No, I don't like this path. This is the wrong approach. The correct approach is to go into action, select this, and we're going to use an option as opposed to some magic number. That's a very much more a Rust point. point of view. So simulation source. I'm looking for the action. Oh, it's in here, that's right. So this world ID needs to be an option. And in this case we set it to none. So it's going to make the serialized data a bit bigger, but it's going to be okay. I'm starting to get quite tired. I need to figure out how to raid you guys to somebody else's server and call it a night shortly. I just really want to get this working, you know? It's very addictive, really, this coding thing, especially when people are watching. It's very motivational, I'm finding, running streams just generally. Having you guys kind of watching and caring makes me want to keep on giving you a nice show. So, Star World link. Build new spaceship. Let's create core. It needs to say none, like this. This place in sector where we check for it. Here. It now needs to say that there's a sum, like this. And there's another one which is in the test. Anyway, we'll just compile and it will tell me. Yeah, exactly. But especially since I want to give you guys like a payoff, you know. Just trying to remember the name of this create new next world ID so I could put it in here because I put the wrong name. Mismatch types, pre-process action needs, get rid of that semicolon, mismatch types here. World ID. What's wrong with this? This is an option now. So by now it needs to not be an option, so it should be is some. It should have some value in it by this point in time. Well, you get the same thing by saying let world ID equal this dot expect and say sector should have put a valid world ID in by now. And then I was going to put a function name, but then I thought that's probably too revealing to leave in the binary. So anyway, it's that function that we did before that checks the actions. Mismatch types here, I need to put a sum in it. Oh yes, I need to put a dot zero because it's only the first element of the tuple we care about here. Variable does not need to be mutable. Okay, sure. Cannot borrow. Self is mutable more than once at a time. So first mutable borrow is to get self.worlds. Where are we? Self.worlds to process the message. So we try and load the world, then we check the action. So if we check the action outside, that problem will go away. Here, use of moved value, submit. That's right, exactly. It should be using the checked action by that point. Oh, I need to invert this. This if statement needs to be on the outside. And then here, because I was going to try and use an option, that's just too hard. Okay. So this is once again that code that was checking to see if we need to modify the action. It might return none if we don't want the action to go ahead. Submit, we don't want to use submit anymore, we're going to use checked. So core is building okay. Yes, so these are parameters that we're printing out. Z lock. So, and let's just not even expect a Y lock at this point, because we don't even need it, so it's kind of redundant to force the user to specify it. Z lock. Don't need a facing. So there's that. I just want to quickly run the tests. Run. Test the simulation. So here we no longer need a new world ID. We should be able to say none, and then don't need this, and then down here we expect a new world ID. How do we find the new world ID? I'm not actually sure. We should find that there's only two worlds that the client knows about. Oh, of course, the spaceship itself has in it the world ID. Right, there it is there. Which is a bit annoying. We should be just 20. We could just write the name number 20 because it's the first number that sectors use. So we could just say const equals 20. Yeah. And then it'll probably want me to make that capital, so I will. And the reason why there's 20 is because in the sector I defined a place to start numbering worlds, and this is the very first one. Oh, I need to specify this as a U32. Yeah, no. In the sector, you'll find this number 20 is also present. It's up here where I define 40. That's why we know the number 20 is present. Yeah, that's totally what's going on. Let's try that again. I'm sure my compilation used to be faster. There's probably some good reason why. Maybe because it's 5 past midnight here. Maybe the computer's getting tired. What's interesting here? Probably those hard-coded numbers I just... This sector should have put a valid world ID in by now. So that code that I wrote before in the sector is not getting exercised. In here, I wrote that pre-process action code. The bit this code is copying the action as opposed to Is this clonable? Yes, clonable, so it's not actually copy. Is create core copy? No, it's clone and create core here. That is copy. Yeah, I think that was the bug. I was hoping a copy. No. Okay, so in sector we put a breakpoint on this. Let's see. Well, breakpoint there, and then right click on this and choose debug. I get a bunch of debug windows opening. They show me variables and so on. So I'll put those. Was there a doc one? There's no doc option here, so put it like this. Okay, so my theory is that I don't want it to be the breakpoint to be here. My theory is that this action in submit is not getting properly modified the way I think it is, and that when I return it, it hasn't been changed. That even though I think I'm changing it, to put a world ID in, which is currently nothing, even though I think that's what's going on, it's not getting changed. So here, action world ID has not changed even though we step through this line. And I think it's because we're modifying a copy of the action as opposed to the action itself. Does mute ref do something magical that makes it work? Why is this wrong? Like, I'm not sure why this is not modifying the original action, or how to actually go about modifying the original action. There's the other way is I could change the signature so it just has to do what I think it's going to do. I was just trying to be fancy. For instance, if I go into create core and I change this, I remove this copy, does that break my compilation? Is it necessary to have a copy in there? And if I don't have a copy in there, then it's going to be impossible for it to compile in a way that is not what I think it's going to do. So let's just try that. Somewhere there's a build. Yes, there's the output for the build. So this looks more promising. Okay. Cannot borrow and create as mutable. That's good. That's kind of what I was expecting here. So now I need to say that this is mutable. or do I need to declare mute here? So now it's saying this variable is changing. So this is starting to look like the code I was expecting to see. So this action here gets changed by this line, whereas before I think it made a clone of it and then it modified the clone and threw it away immediately, which is kind of like nothing. Okay, so how does this go? Okay, good. So now it acts the way I expect it to in a settable world, and it's just that my constant was still 20 in this particular location. So we've moved past that problem, and once again unit tests have really been useful here, because debugging that with a real client and a real server and having to click a button to actually recreate that problem would have been a real nuisance. But because it was a unit test, I could debug all that properly. And you see now the server, which is where this processing goes on, is what's in control of the world ID, and it has a much better idea what to set it to, and it's safer. The test passes. Okay, so let's try building a core again, which is what we need for Godot. Thanks, weird. Mismatch types. So I removed one of these. I don't need to remove it from there as well. Cannot borrow star self as mutable more than once at a time. It's been borrowed self client, which is here, and self.setup instructions here. Okay, so it's saying we can't put this in a little function. Okay, well, we don't need this. This code can be outside the if statement, and then we won't have that problem. Okay, so we don't want to move out of there, we want to use a reference to it. That's fine. Great, so now the game will even run. The chances of it working is very low. So let's just quit the server and restart that. The server now has to do something extra anyway, so if I somehow manage to keep the server running, it wouldn't work correctly because this binary is out of date. It wouldn't modify that event. Let's run Godot, the recall singularity. So, I think we already had no, we will close the menu from earlier. Here's a text interface that's full of all sorts of warnings. Probably should pay more attention to this. Server's running. It's also full of text. So, not quite sure how much of this stuff to show you guys. Okay, Godot. Let's run this. Okay, enter ship build. So it's just saying this function needs these brackets. It won't let me. I often press save. It often says no, you can't. I can't find cursor ship build in the tree. It's just here. Did I place it inside something? I think I placed it inside cursor hover. No. Okay. It's because up here I had to find a bunch of variables and I didn't put cursor ship build in that bunch of variables here. Again, it won't let me save, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so that loads. I didn't change the text on that. Okay, so clicking on this calls build new spaceship. Couldn't find build new spaceship inside of all ships. So Oh, that's right, because Star World is... No, that's not the explanation. So in Star World link, this function cannot be found in Godot. Why can't it be found in Godot? Godot's the wrong version, somehow it's not visible. And somehow it's a different class. That's the right class. Somehow it loaded the wrong DLL. You know. I could put another message in here if I was really getting suspicious, just to check. What else can we do? Cursor ship build. All ships. What is an all ships? It is Star World. Oh, it's that node. Star ships, not the Star World itself. It's the Star World that I want to send a message to. So the problem is actually here. If I was to just say change this code, so we'll just stop this real quick and we'll go down to cursor ship build and we'll change this so instead of using all ships it just has a var star link, and the star link is actually up to this point here like that, and we use starlink.build new spaceship. That would probably work. So we'll run this again. Bam! New spaceship. 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 Build a spaceship. I want to build a spaceship. Let's build a spaceship. Build a spaceship. Build a spaceship. Build a spaceship. Game. So launch the second one. So we've got 2 games. Spaceship. Let's build more spaceships. Spaceship. Build a spaceship. Build a spaceship. Okay, so you can see this is a bug I've had before, which is that the second game for some reason is not getting the actions. There's some synchronization problem. It might be that it's still fast forwarding or something. Something weird's going on with the tick count. But whatever the problem, this particular one here is not updating. But it's still pretty exciting. It got the initial state correct. So cool. And then of course you can build things inside and build scoops. Oh, we seem to have ended up with duplicate spaceships on top of each other, and they're just waiting for you to add one thing for it to like flip out, literally. Oh, so cool. Everything's just going to pot over here. My performance is just going through the floor, and yeah, I think the second client is just hammering the CPU trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Oh, it's just too cool. Okay, so yeah, they're not supposed to rotate that way. It's part of the physics. It's a bug in the physics at the moment. Thank you, Pingo. So let's make a little GIF. So I run a program called lice pcap, licecap. Nope, I binged it instead. Licecap. Here we go. So this little box here is going to record a GIF for us, right? So we'll run a server. I think I still have the server running because the server just died straight away. So here's our server still running. I'm just going to quit this and I'm going to run it again. Server. So here's our server running. Here's the game running. Like this. It's going to make the game really small. And one problem making the game really small is you lose the UI at the bottom. So anyway, run the game again. Here it is with the game at the bottom, so I'll just zoom out a bunch. That's what we'll do instead. Okay, So we've got two games like this. To move it down like that. Yeah, something like that. I don't know, somewhere in there. And in order for the GIF to really work, you need to be able to see that there's two clients running. So two clients running. There we go. We'll have to just have people understand that that's what's going on. I don't know. Now, click record, making ships, and click here, flight disk. Oh no, the other one got smaller. And blam, blam, blam. You can see them here, right? And then stop. And go look at my little folder of pictures and making ships. Here's my GIF. Blam, blam, blam. Ta-da! So wonderful. And then I get to go into my Twitter, which is something that everyone aspires to have, which is, you know, a Twitter full of GIFs. If you don't have a Twitter full of GIFs, I seriously recommend you get a Twitter full of GIFs. So we're going to just share the progress that we have all made together as a people. You can now build little ships. Wow. These will soon have cores inside and cost money. Be sure to say blam, blam, blam in your head as each one is built. Note multiplayer also built on stream. Yay! That's so cool. I'm really happy with that. That's like pretty major success. And I feel like that's like the first really good chunk of stuff that I've done. Not only is the first chunk of stuff I've done this year, it's like the first good piece of gameplay code I've really done for a while, because I've been so busy dealing with infrastructure for ages. So I'm really proud of that. And I think with that I need to sign off. So I understand that is my solemn responsibility as your curator to find a victim to send you all to, and unless you want to keep coding Pengo, I need to find someone new. So I'm not sure how one goes about doing that. Raid a channel. So let's see who's doing Factorio. Zoolan apparently is doing Factorio. So I'm going to tell you guys need to go tell Zoolan's people that there's a space Factorio coming. Is this actually even running? Yeah. So it was a real pleasure. It was a real pleasure, guys, to have you on board. And I seriously suggest that if you liked what you watched, you should remember the Recall Singularity, which is the name of my game. And you should join up to my Twitter. It would be a real pleasure to see you guys here. And there's lots of great articles to enjoy. Otherwise, I hope to see you online. Feel free to follow. Good night, everybody. And yeah, thanks, Pongo. Thanks for rating. And cheers. Feel free to join my Discord, which I mentioned earlier, or just search for the Recall Singularity. You'll find me. Such a pleasure to have you along. Hope you enjoy this wonderful game of Factorio, which is totally not an inspiration for my game. Enjoy. Bye.